Welcome to Sara Gonzales Unfiltered. We have a lot to get into today, and I am going to, of course, get to the giant news of the day, which is, did we just enter World War III? But I want to make a quick note that earlier this afternoon, the judge in Donald Trump's, of course, felony case, the hush money payment case, actually adjourned the sentencing date. So they've decided to, what they're saying is they're postponing it until after the election. Yeah, guys, you failed. He's now not a felon, and there's no way in hell you're going to pick this back up at the end of his 4-year term. So they're just embarrassingly going quietly into the night. But that is some breaking news here this afternoon. So obviously the much more pressing news of the day here was that overnight, Ukraine actually launched United States-made missiles into Russia, which was a move that Vladimir Putin, for the last several days, has been warning, if you do this, you are going to bring whatever country made the missiles, you're going to bring NATO, you're going to bring all of these other countries into this ongoing war. And so Joe Biden gave the green light. And after he gave the green light, 6 U.S.-made missiles were used in this attack. Now, Russia says that they shot down 5 of them. One of them actually hit one of their ammunition depots. And Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov spoke of Russia's potential response to the escalation, saying that Russia has now updated Russia's nuclear weapons policy. He said Ukraine's use of non-nuclear weapons from the West against Russia can prompt a nuclear response. And I want to play a clip of Vladimir Putin back in September talking about Ukraine using these long missiles from NATO countries and what that might mean for these NATO countries. Watch. He says very important, maybe the key, is that only NATO servicemen can enter flight assignments into these missile systems. Ukrainian servicemen cannot do this. This is not about allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons or not. It is about deciding whether NATO countries are directly involved in a military conflict or not. If this decision is made, it will mean nothing other than the direct participation of NATO countries, the United States, European countries, in the war in Ukraine. This is their direct participation, and this already, of course, significantly changes the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. This would mean that NATO countries, the United States, European countries, are at war with Russia. And if that is the case, then bearing in mind the change in the very essence of this conflict, we will take appropriate decisions based on the threats that will be posed to us. There it is. He said it. Joe Biden gave the green light to use United States long missiles. And I want to bring on, of course, Sara Gonzales Unfiltered foreign relations expert, Jason Buttrill, to dig into this. I don't profess to be like the foreign relations person. I mean, I dabble in it, but I'm not, this is not my strong suit. So
I would feel more comfortable with you there than who's over there now, Sarah. So maybe we should push that along, actually.
That's fair. That's fair. Jason's already so upset he's throwing
his mug,
throwing my mugs all over the place. So, I mean, I'm not going to put you in a position where I'm like, isn't Vladimir Putin great and isn't he right? But like what he just said there is not unreasonable, right? I mean, he's like, you guys are the ones who have the codes. You guys are the ones who are working in conjunction with Ukraine to send missiles and hit our people. this is not a proxy war anymore. This is your direct participation, and we should respond accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely insane that you had to caveat what you just said.
I know. Well, if you say anything like, hey, I don't like this war, you get called a Russian asset.
Totally.
Right.
I know. I was tweeting about this earlier today, and like I did the same thing. I put it like a subtweet where I was like, I'm obviously not saying that I'm a Putin lover. Right. I don't like Russia. I think they're bad. It's retarded that we have to say that.
I know.
Okay.
I know. It's insane.
When I look at these foreign policy stuff, like always my key to it is to try to understand it, is to always pretend that you're the bad guy and just flip the map completely around and say, how do you feel right now? How would you feel?
Exactly.
And the way I would feel is, let's just say it from our own country. Let's take a look at, let's say Russia was putting, military assets in either Mexico or Canada. How would we feel? A country that borders our country. Let's say it's BRICS. Members of BRICS are doing this. So it's a full-on block of allies that are doing this. You probably wouldn't be too happy. The way Putin's talking about this is, in that clip that you just showed, he was talking about the key for some of these systems. Right. He's talking about the guidance information. So Ukrainians can't just flip the on switch. Right. Make sure the modem's plugged in, and just hit the button. You've got to get permission through U.S. systems.
They need our authorization.
You need someone to input the coordinates. Well, I don't know who else is doing that except for U.S. servicemen. Right. That's the only thing that I think that's the only way it works.
Under Joe Biden's approval.
So we are supplying the weapons. We're picking the targets, I guess, and supplying the coordinates. And they're just the ones that are saying, okay, yeah, go ahead, now we can fire. Well, who's actually attacking who right there? Right. We would flip our heads if the situation was reversed.
And rightfully so.
And look, it's not unheard of. It's not traitorous. It's not like, you're loving the enemy. If you point out the fact that, look, nations have interests. They're not crazy. Very rarely are they crazy. Maybe Kim Jong-un is crazy, right? But he's one of the crazy. He's one of the outliers. He's not the rule here. It's most people like Putin are, viciously pragmatic. And they're looking at what could happen in the future. You have NATO weapons in this country that borders your country. It's a country where you said, look, from the very beginning, even though you told us that NATO was not going to progress eastward, said this way back after the Cold War, right as the Cold War was ending, you said NATO wasn't going to progress. It kept happening. We said this is our red line after, coincidentally, every time a Democrat gets in office, Ukraine, something happens. Yeah. Happened again. You said, okay, well, just let us know that they're not going to join NATO, and maybe we can work something out. Not only did they didn't just ignore it, they flat out said no. If they want to, we have an open door policy. They can do it if they want to. What the hell else is going to happen? Right. And the fact that our leaders have suddenly stopped thinking this way. This is how diplomatic solutions happen. When they think about, okay, I'm my enemy, what do I want? That's how it used to be done. And then you come together and you find solutions that are beneficial for both sides. We've lost the ability to do that. Actually, I don't think they've lost the ability to do that. They won't do it.
They don't want to.
Right. The big question then is why? I think, why would Biden wait his entire presidency from the moment this war started up until now, 60 days, around-ish, 62, something like that?
61 now, maybe.
Before the next administration comes in, Donald Trump. Why would he wait until all the way at the end? First off, I don't think that Biden did give this order.
That's what I was going to say, is like, we all know Biden's not the one who's making these decisions.
Right. I'm sure as he's sitting there like Jimmy Carter was, in that wheelchair, they hand him a stamp, just stamped it. Right. But personally, I think this is the death gasps of the regime. This military-industrial complex, which includes the intelligence and diplomatic corps, I think that they are scared to death that their entire way of thinking since the end of World War II is about to change. We are going to relook at some of our alliances, like NATO. We're going to relook how we deal with certain countries. We might force other countries, like Ukraine, into accepting a deal that is not the best. Oh my God, awesome. Russia completely retreated and we won everything back, including Crimea. That's never going to happen. Right. You got to think pragmatically. They know that's the end. And so this is the last, Hail Mary to how do we lock in the old status quo through Trump's administration. They want to force him into being a wartime president. That's what's going on right now.
100%. So then would you agree with the characterization that their ultimate goal is, of course, globalism? I mean, we're looking at, all of or forever war, or, there are certain people on both sides with different interests, but you look at the way that they have tried to create this. We were talking about this yesterday. I was like, I don't know if we're still like not supposed to say these words on YouTube anymore when we were talking about the Great Reset and all of these things, that everything that they were doing was moving closer and closer to that. They had a freaking website up that explained it and you still weren't allowed to say it. But it's like, it feels a whole lot like they're mad because their plans for that are being totally dismantled with Donald Trump coming in. And a really, really fortunate byproduct for them is that they can then screw Donald Trump in the process by escalating this into what could potentially turn into World War III. And then they get to put it all on him if things don't go the way that obviously that would be in the best interest of the United States.
Yeah, 100%. I think that both sides in this want some form of globalism.
Yeah.
It's clearly defined under what the UN's trying to do now, what Joe Biden is fully signed on to, what the vision of the future that they have in mind. They're going full speed ahead towards that. And anyone stands in that way, they're going to, starting a war is not unheard of.
Right.
They're glad to do it. Not only does it, press the agenda towards what they want the world to look like, but they also make a whole lot of money along the line.
Exactly right.
A whole lot of money.
Exactly right.
Now, when I say both sides are looking for their own form of globalism, which ultimately is authoritarianism. In the end, it's authoritarianism. Look at the end goal. That's what they're looking for. The Russian side wants the same thing. They may talk about a multipolar war, but they want to control that multipolar war, if that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it does.
Sure.
Both sides want to control the world. I think that the people that will shatter this system, hopefully that's Donald Trump's administration, will say, no, we don't want anyone to dominate the world, right? We want to do our business. We want to do it without inhibiting other people and without, causing another global catastrophe. We want Americans to make a whole lot of money. We want Americans to be safe. And I think we can be fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes me back to when I confronted Senator John Cornyn, who is an embarrassment to the state of Texas, by the way. But I confronted him on this summer, and I was like, why are you why are you so fine sending all of our money to Ukraine? Why do you keep voting to do that? And his response to me was like, do you want a World War III? And I'm like, no, that's why I'm asking why you keep sending all of our money and ammunition and missiles and getting involved in this war, because I'm concerned about the World War III. You're clearly not concerned about it because you've been this was the biggest open secret in forever that this was a proxy war between the Biden regime or, the deep state, the bureaucracy, and Russia. That's been clear. So it's so funny to me that was there. Well, do you want World War III? Well, what the hell do you think this is? And if it isn't the biggest you to average Americans who literally just participated in an election process where we had the option, do we want to continue engaging in this forever war complex, or do we want to get off the crazy train, and do we want someone with a different policy, with different, objectives, with trying to actually end this rather than fund it forever? We just participated in an election and the deep state could not handle it. And they said, we're going to put this into motion before you guys get your guy who's going to bring world peace, because we can't handle this.
Yeah. That's exactly what I believe is happening right now. That's exactly what's happening right now. They're trying to hold on to power. They're trying to maintain the status quo. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because I've had multiple conversations all day from people that were asking similar questions. They were like, well, do you think that now this will make the people that really want war take a step back, the firing off of these missiles? Do you think now this will scare them to where, the threat of nuclear war, do you think that'll make them pause? And I'll be like, no, because exactly what you just said. They think they are doing all this because they are saving us from World War III. Right. They're not even thinking about, we're causing World War III. Right. It's the craziest thing. Yeah. They don't think that escalation is making things worse. Right. They really don't.
Right. It's like, what do you think is the logical end conclusion when you're involving yourself in a war that has nothing to do with you?
Right.
You think it's just going to stay over there and we're not going to be dragged into it? Like, that's retarded.
Yeah, not a single one of them has talked about peace. Not a single one of them. In fact, quite the opposite. Boris Johnson flew to Kiev to talk to Zelensky to tell him not to accept their latest peace proposal. He stopped it, said, no. We have to go towards taking all territory back. It's a full-on victory or nothing else. In what world is that ever possible? That's not going to happen.
No.
Everyone knows that's not going to happen.
No.
So what is your endpoint?
Right.
It's what's scary is they're not even thinking that.
No.
The endpoint is, let's say a tactical nuclear weapon gets fired over into Ukraine. Then how do we respond? Because that's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
They could decide to do that as per their nuclear doctrine now.
Right. Well, I one more piece here to this puzzle that it's of course begun calls. I think rightfully so. I go back and forth on how I feel about this, but calls to do we impeach Joe Biden? Do they invoke the 25th Amendment and remove him? Like what needs to happen? Because this is a complete betrayal of the American people on behalf of Joe Biden. Thomas Massey tweeted out earlier. He said, by authorizing long-range missiles to strike inside Russia, Biden is committing an unconstitutional act of war that endangers the lives of all U.S. citizens. This is an impeachable offense, but the reality is he's an emasculated puppet of the deep state. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, they impeached Donald Trump over a fucking phone call. They impeached him. Why shouldn't we impeach this bastard? Yeah, sure. Even after, that's fine. Just for the historical books, right? They did it to Donald Trump. And I'm looking at this and I'm just like, they impeached him for way less. However, I'm not a fan of invoking the amendment that's going to give us a President Kamala. She's just gonna you think she's gonna put a stop to it? I mean, she's in on it. The puppet masters are controlling both of them. So I'm not really a big fan of that. But do you think that there should be some sort of like ramifications for this type? I mean, to me, this is it's it's borderline treasonous in my opinion. Yeah,
well, no, I completely agree with you.
Okay.
And I think that at least the show of an impeachment would be at least a consolation prize to know that, hey, Congress still has our backs on this stuff. But their priorities are so out of whack. I don't think they could even get to it. I really don't.
I know. I agree.
Look how screwed their priorities are, right? Not a single one of, there's been no leaks on any of this. There probably won't be. There weren't generals going behind his back, conversing with the enemy, saying, oh, don't worry, we got you. This is what they did to Trump.
Right.
And Trump, all he was doing was just trying to keep us out of wars.
Exactly.
This is exactly opposite, and it's full steam ahead.
Yeah.
So they're not going to invoke the 25th Amendment because they think they're the crusaders stopping World War III and not causing it. Yeah. We got to get them the hell out. We need to get Donald Trump to make a public statement.
Yes.
He cannot legally call Putin on this or Zelensky, but
until he's president.
Yeah. There's some Hatch Act stuff. But what he can do is make a public statement. Mm-hmm. He can make a public statement and address them directly and say, guys, chill for a little bit.
Enough. I will bring you peace. Just hold off. I'm sorry that this old decrepit president or pretend president has done this, but I will fix it.
Yeah, that's what he needs to do immediately.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Jason, I appreciate you coming on a little bit last minute.
Sure.
You're looking so good. So fit. I just have to say.
Baby steps, little by little.
Yeah, you look great. So I appreciate you. And just saying, you are the designated foreign relations expert.
I'll take it.
Next time there's something that happens like this, I'm going to make you come back.
I'm coming.
Okay. All right. Phrasing. So I want to, before we go to break here, I want to thank our sponsor, Patriot Mobile. Listen, Patriot Mobile, it's really this simple. Patriot Mobile is America's only conservative Christian wireless provider. So if you're still with Big Mobile, stop doing that. You're giving your money to a company that is over at these like trans parades like T-Mobile, which I saw with my very own eyeballs when I went undercover at these places. They are funding the left. What Patriot Mobile does is they're funding the causes that you believe in. If you're watching this channel, you believe in free speech. You believe in the ability to, practice your Second Amendment. Jason's still laughing.
It's like that Trump meme. Come on, Harris.
So I'm just telling you, you're going to get the same network coverage. They've got coverage on all three major networks. You can keep your number or you can get a new one. But odds are they're going to save you money as well. So make sure to go check them out. You can go to patriotmobile.com. /Sarah. It's patriotmobile.com/Sarah. You'll get a free month when you use the offer code Sarah right now. So go to patriotmobile.com/Sarah. Well, I want to welcome back to the show. I'd like to call him my friend. I think that we're friends by this point. Ryan Walters, of course, Oklahoma State Superintendent. Well, I have to be careful who I call a friend because I would say I'm a controversial figure, but I guess you are too at this point because you're doing crazy things like reintroducing the Bible into public schools in Oklahoma.
No, so crazy, right? It was so funny. We talked about this a little bit, but, the New York Times fact-checked me on it. And they even admitted, well, he is right. Until the 1960s, it would have been in every classroom in America. It's like, crazy thought. The most read book in American history actually is in an American history class, right?
Whoa. That's controversial, Ryan. You can't do that. So I want to play the clip, I think that has the left just epically melting down that you put out just explaining that you were going to put the Bible back in schools. Watch.
I'm excited to announce today that Oklahoma is the first state to bring the Bible back to the classroom. Today, we purchased over 500 Bibles that will be in the AP government classrooms across the state. Bible just like this. We have the Bible, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. These are foundational documents in our nation's history. Our kids have to understand the role the Bible played in influencing American history. It's very clear that the radical left has driven the Bible out of the classroom, which leads to a lack of understanding of American history. We will not stop until we've brought the Bible back to every classroom in the state.
Wow. You hate monger. That's terrible. I can't believe you would do something like that for, as you point out, rightfully so, American history, which, I'm not a historian, but I do recall that religion played a pretty important role in the entire concept of founding this country.
It did. And that's not a controversial thing to say either, and that's where, look, the left, they lose it over this issue. And you go, it really does show you how far the indoctrination has come because you just say, listen, again, you don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to agree with the things that were done in history, but you do have to study it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, don't we all believe that you study history so then you can kind of better shape your worldview and decision making? But it just shows you they're going, no. Documents that were readily available throughout our history, undeniably influential, we got to hide them. I mean, we don't want them. Heaven forbid a kid read the Bible. Heaven forbid a kid understand that other people read the Bible. And again, though, you get to this level of absurdity, and I've challenged leftists on this and asked them to explain then, what would you tell a kid if they asked you why the Pilgrims came to America? Like, how do you explain that story?
Exactly.
If you got to tiptoe around, well, I know I can't say the Bible, I can't mention Christianity, I can't mention their faith. Obviously, it just gets absurd really fast. But again, that's the left for you. It does get absurd, and they interject their own woke ideas into history, and then they try to turn you against every member of American history. And so that's just where they go.
Well, speaking of absurdity, I mean, we're really dealing with seemingly an entire party of people, half the country, who don't understand the craziness of fighting against allowing the Bible in schools, but also fighting for pornographic literature to be put in school libraries.
It's literally the same people that fought me on they wanted to keep genderqueer and flamer in the classroom. Or they just twisted themselves into knots arguing inclusivity means you have to have pornography to kindergartners, which is, I mean, again, you just look at people and go, did you really say that out loud? Are the same people that say, I don't care if Martin Luther King quoted extensively from the Bible. You can't have it in a classroom.
Right.
You can't talk about that. But, you just see how divorced from reality the left is, and you see that the concepts they're trying to push on the American people, if you actually study history, if you read the founding documents, you see how out of step they are with traditional values, American values, just traditional values, just common sense. But that's where their party is today. And frankly, it's like, there's part of me that goes, hey guys, you're doing this to yourself, right? This implosion, it's like, I almost don't want to stop our opponents while they're making all these mistakes. It's like, guys, you're being repudiated by your own voters, by your own followers here.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I was having this conversation with one of my panelists yesterday about Will they look at this election, the results of this election, the mandate? I know despite them trying to find more votes in California so that they can be like, actually, she took the lead in the popular vote 2 weeks after the election. But this was clearly a mandate. And so their choice will be, do we double down on the same crazy rhetoric that got us to this position, or do we course correct? And historically, the left is not great at course correcting. They typically will double down. And so my panelist said that he saw, I think it was the Rolling Stone, that they had an article that was like, actually, we should keep talking about trans issues more after the election. And it's like, no, they really have not learned their lesson. They just want to keep pushing this rather than course correct.
I mean, they're still counting ballots and stuff. I mean, it's like, President Trump does a great job of going, hey, guys, they're trying to steal an election.
Yes.
Look at the data, look at the numbers. Yes. And then 2 weeks later, they're still going, you know what? We're still got it going on. Yep. So, there is part of it that you can't rise above your own worldview and your ideology. And they are so broken with this this woke ideology that's where they are. But, they have been aided so long. Mm-hmm. By the liberal corporate media. So they've gotten away with it. They've gotten away with saying absurd things. They've gotten away with positions that you go, look, in practicality, that would be absurd and just lead to tragic consequences and chaos.
Right.
But, no one challenged them on it, so they just got to go around their merry way. And now that President Trump called them out, now that we've got media like your show that says, actually, you're going to have to defend and own some of this, and people are asking a lot of questions, well, it's a different story.
Yeah, well, and now, thankfully, we have an RNC with good people in charge who are actually suing who needs to be sued, and, the venues that need to be sued. So I do want to ask you, I saw a little rumor, a little birdie told me that you may be one of few people being considered to run the Department of Education under the new Donald Trump administration. Can you comment on that at all?
Well, I'll say this. So President Trump has an unbelievable mandate across the country. But I'm going to tell you, he's got an unbelievable mandate in Oklahoma. Every one of our counties, we have 77 counties, every one of them voted for Donald Trump. Not just this election, but the one before and the one before that. So 3 times. We are a MAGA nation in Oklahoma. And so we have moved forward to say, President Trump's agenda is happening here. You want to see what Make America Great Again looks like in policy and action and education? It's Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And so we've been doing that. We have been enacting the America First agenda at rapid speed. We have seen record success in the last 2 years in doing that. And we're going to keep on going. So no matter who President Trump selects in that position, and I know that's a very interesting topic, and I'm honored to just be in that conversation. We are going to lead the country to make President Trump's vision for our schools, for our country, reality for our schools, for our kids, and for our parents.
Do you think that whoever it may be, because I realize that was a very PC answer. Okay, I get it. But whether it's you or someone else, I'll just say this. Do you think that the Department of Education should ultimately stay or be abolished?
Oh, it should be abolished. And I think it's gone. President Trump has been crystal clear.
Let's go.
That's right. It's gone. They need to start packing their bags. All those Marxist bureaucrats, just start packing your bags. Hey, that building's about to be leveled. Okay, it's about to just be dust up there. So, look, President Trump has been clear. And by the way, he's even laid out some specificity around it, too. Of hey, it's going away. This is going to be returned to the states. States get ready to go. We already announced kind of our plan for some options that we've provided out publicly to say, hey, this would be amazing for our parents. This would be amazing for our kids, because for the first time, we won't have this federal overreach in nearly 4 decades. And I know your viewers know this, but it is amazing to me to watch the left just become Chicken Little over this issue of just if there's not a Department of Education, what's going to happen? And I'm going, okay, well, so for over 200 years, we didn't have one. Mm-hmm. And if memory serves me correctly from the history books, right, we were the greatest country in the history of the world without a federal Department of Education. Okay, it came along in the last 40 years, and every statistic has gotten worse. We have watched the negative impact on our schools by that agency. And so, frankly, you look at history, this is a weird experiment we're in,
right,
saying, federal government, why don't you dictate to every state what education should be like? It's absurd. It's ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you, we're going to be so much better off. And you're going to see, look, we're going to run with it. We can't wait. But look, you're going to see conservative states all over the country that go, thank you. We can't wait to enact innovative policy of putting power back in the hands of families.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. It's been so funny watching these leftists. They'll, tweet or post on social media like, oh my God, what are we going going to do without the Department of Education? And their grammar is all messed up.
Right.
And then, you know, it's like, oh no, what are we going to do being like last at everything, and we're spending the most money per pupil, and we don't have the results that we should for spending that amount of money. Oh no, what will we do in order to improve that? It's like they don't understand at all that they're like, it's literal proof. They're like, but our students are failing and we're getting mediocre test scores, and it's like, right, that's our argument. Thank you for making it.
And then you go, like, let's take a step back. So with a one-room schoolhouse, remember, you know, the teacher with the one-room schoolhouse where they're going math, reading, science, history, back to the basics. We created and helped develop some of the greatest minds in the history of the world in that classroom. Now liberals are wanting you to believe, I mean, if we don't have those 4,000 plus bureaucrats in D.C., I mean, how do you teach math? I'm going, those 4,000 bureaucrats in D.C. brought you Common Core math. Remember the absurdity of Common Core math when parents are just pulling their hair out going, no, it's 2 + 2 = 4, not 2 + 2 enters into a deeper equation and thought process. I mean, that's what we got from D.C., and that's what we've got to get back to is common sense in education, empowering parents. And listen, President Trump's been awesome talking about, let's take our schools from teaching kids to hate this country, which we know you can't survive as a civilization that way. You just can't.
Right.
Let's go from that to actually teaching the basics and encouraging patriotism, encouraging this generation to be like so many generations that came before us, right? The greatest generation, all these other generations that said America is something worth fighting for because of its core principles, because of the beliefs that America holds dear. Let's get back to that. And it's a beautiful day in America to wake up to hearing President Trump say those words.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. Can you hang out?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Stay with me. By the way, those of you who are watching, we just learned this afternoon, we were talking about this off air, that North Carolina, the House there, they just overrode Governor Cooper's veto of school choice. So they had more than a supermajority, and so they are now overriding that. And I'm just saying, wow, that's so great that North Carolina now will have school choice before Texas.
Let's go, Texas. Come on, let's go.
That's what I'm saying. Let's freaking go, Texas. What are you waiting for? All right, stick with me here. And by the way, if anyone in the Trump administration asks me, my vote is for you. So stick with me, and we're going to bring in another guest here. First, I want to remind you guys, if you have not yet gotten your tickets to go see Bonhoeffer, go support Angel Studios. They are making really, really great films. They're non-woke. They're woke-free. Any movie that you watch from Angel Studios, you know is first going to be awesome. And second, it's not going to have a bunch of like weird agendas with it that you're like, wait, I can't bring my kids to come watch this. So obviously Dietrich Bonhoeffer is a famous figure in history, and it just kind of goes into his story. It hits theaters November 22nd. Make sure to get showtimes over at angel.com/Sarah. That is angel.com/Sarah. Joining us now at the table, we have Eric July, of course, BlazeTV contributor and founder of Ripaverse Comics. Thanks for joining the party.
Oh, of course. Glad to be here as always.
It's a party today.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're going to get involved in World War III, you might as well party it up while you still can. So Donald Trump, throughout his campaign, this has just been incredible to watch. Throughout his campaign, very much campaigned on the idea of mass deportations. And in fact, some of the recent polling right before the election that I saw indicated that like 80% of Americans now believe in and support mass deportation because they see how bad it's gotten. And despite Donald Trump campaigning on that, and I would say winning this mandate, this, I think, had a lot to do with that. The left is like, oh, no, he's actually going to do it. And so it's been so fascinating to watch. But the real kicker for them that they just can't get over, I don't know why they can't get over it, because this is the only way that it could be done, is that Donald Trump, let's pull up Tom Fitton's tweet here. Good news, reports are the incoming Trump administration prepared to declare a national emergency and will use military assets to reverse the Biden invasion through a mass deportation program, to which Donald Trump responded, true. Well, you can't have that. And it's like, but how else did you expect us to be able to do this it is a national emergency. It's absolutely a national emergency. You have, if you believe the conservative estimates, which I don't, if you believe the conservative estimates, you have 10 to 12 million unvetted strangers in this country. At least 100 of them who Department of Homeland Security and Congress have come out and said they are they're terrorists. So how else do you do this when you're talking about this many people other than using military assets? And by the way, I'm not a huge fan of declaring any arbitrary thing a national emergency. If you ever were going to declare a national emergency on anything, this would be one of them, in my opinion. Eric, I'm going to let you weigh in first here.
Yeah, look, libertarianism aside, right? If I am to believe that the whole point, I guess, of this beloved Constitution and its military and what it's there to do, it is to protect the United States of America, right? Yeah. Now, again, I've argued every other day on this show where my positions kind of lie on some of that. But I think what's happened here is that the American people, unfortunately, became so comfortable with our military being involved in everybody else's affairs that when they start to actually get involved in the affairs of American people, they're like, whoa, what's going on? You're not supposed to do that. When it's like, well, if they were actually going by, again, the document that they supposedly follow, they would have long been doing that. And really, it would have been limited to things of this
We wouldn't be in this position at all.
You wouldn't be in this position at all. One can make that argument. So to your point, you brought it up earlier. And I think it's very important to mention that this subject matter has, while yes, people that tend to lean conservative are going to be a little more pro deportation than I think than their leftist counterparts. However, a lot of people on the left have started to shift kind of the other way. To your point, because definitely in these major cities, they're finally seeing what happens, right? So you've seen what's going on in New York City. You've seen what's going on in cities like Chicago. And they're like, wait a minute. This is not what we signed up for. And it's impacting them locally. So this is, again, it might be slanted one way, but it's not just a Republican issue anymore, a conservative issue.
Yeah, well, or a Texas issue, right?
For that matter.
We're all border states now, Ryan.
That's right. Hey, look, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. What you've seen now is this shift where people have seen the impact of illegal immigration on their state. Every state is a border state. We've seen the overrunning of Oklahoma schools with illegal immigrants, whether it's a big school district or small school district. We've seen it. We've seen the impact of broader society. We've seen the economic impact. We've seen the fentanyl coming across the border. And again, you go, well, President Trump has kept his campaign promises. He's already laying out plans to do that. That's why the American people voted overwhelmingly for him, because they knew when he comes out and says he's going to do something, it's going to happen. And you're seeing that right now with, the left going, hold on a second. Now, we can't let him do what he said he was going to do. It's like, that's why we have elections. He won overwhelmingly. He was as upfront about what his priorities were and what he was going to do for the American people. And now it's time to see that policy in action. And I think Americans all across the country are ready to see that happen.
I totally agree. I want to play here his border czar, who, as it turns out, is a way more functioning human being than Kamala Harris, Tom Homan. And he was talking about all of his objectives when it comes to how to handle this crisis, this invasion. And here is what he had to say. Watch.
Look, there's a lot of priorities the president has when it comes to immigration. Number one, he needs to secure that border. He needs to run a deportation operation, get rid of a lot of folks that aren't supposed to be here, especially the criminals and national security threats. And third, we need to find over 300,000 children that are missing in this country, that were trafficked into this country, released by this administration to unvetted sponsors.
Yep.
We got to find those children and rescue them. But we don't have access to most countries' criminal data. So when they say they're vetting somebody, they vet them through a national security database, see if there's any terrorism links, and even that's weak. Because most terrorists in this world, they're not in any database. We know who they are. But the criminal, they run against NCIC and III. Most of the nation, El Salvador, China, Russia. You think they're sharing any of this data with us? So a lot of the nations, they don't have systems like NCIC.
Well, so you mean to tell me that when places like Venezuela empty their prisons and say, go forth to the United States, they're not going to pick up the phone and be like, hey, by the way, we're sending a bunch of criminals to your southern border. You mean to tell me we're not going to know when those people are coming here? Of course not. I love this man being in charge of this because he is talking about, I think, one of the most important issues that we get into this nuance of we got to get these people out. We have to find these children. We have to find these children that are being trafficked all across our country right now. It's a big deal, and I've talked about it. I have talked about it on the show. Every time we talk about this conversation, I'm like, I don't talk about this enough. I don't talk about this enough. I mean, the Biden administration, or regime, as I like to call them, is participating, willing participants in like one of the greatest human trafficking scandals of history. And it seems to be an afterthought in this country because there are just so many other crazy things when you talk about being overwhelmed at the border. But I'm just so glad to hear someone who is going to be in charge of this talking about the children in this.
And, and the left, they've got these feel-good policies. They think they sound great, and they run them out there in campaigns, and then they come in and they implement them, and there's real-world consequences from them. I mean, again, President Trump is putting in real people that understand the problem and are going to bring about the solutions. And you just sit there and listen to it and go, 300,000 children that we don't know where they are, that are being trafficked into the country. And again, it's like that policy that doesn't feel very good, does it? It actually harmed people. So y'all want to do this, hey, it sounds good, this touchy-feely kind of policy. No, what has happened is you've endangered so many individuals in this country, and now President Trump continues with just these incredible appointments of people that understand the problem and are going to come in and solve it.
Yeah, they want to call themselves the compassionate party. I don't think it's very compassionate to allow children to go with unvetted sponsors, and now they're missing all across the country. Last word, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, that's the harsh reality of this. This is why I'm always talking about, like, even fellow libertarians and how they are really lax on this issue, and understandably so, but they live in this sort of pipe dream, right? And leftists especially live in this sort of pipe dream where everybody that's coming over the border is just this person that's looking for this awesome job, right? Better life, wanting to live this sort of American dream. And that's simply not true. Obviously, I've lived in South Texas for, 6 years of my life. I've seen crazy stuff with my own eyes and what's going down there. And that's what's kind of peeled me on that specific issue. Stuff like that is happening. The great Hans Hermann Hoppe, he had said, like, look, when you're dealing with, the government has monopolized the border or whatever, so either they act or they don't act. Either way, there's going to be injustices, right, on both sides of this. And the problem is that left often thinks that those injustices are non-existent on the other side. And that's what we're dealing with now, whether it be with the trafficking. And look, it is, end on this note, it's a harsh reality that when doing things like this, right, there are going to be some folks that got to get up out of here, like the brother man said, like, you just deport the families together. We don't got to separate them at all. Get rid of them. But that's kind of what this is going to look like. So whether it be elimination of a lot of these programs, some folks are going to go without. They'll figure it out, but they're going to go without. That's the harsh reality. When you let something be a problem for so long, it's going to look like that once it's time to get fixed.
Yeah, absolutely right. All right, we've got more to come. We'll be right back. So Nancy Mace, Representative Nancy Mace, has filed a bill. She's going to file a bill that would require members of the same sex. I don't even know. I need a flow chart for this. Basically, no trans in female spaces in Congress, because they now have a biological male, Sarah McBride, who has just been elected, and they want to prevent this person from entering the women's restroom, I think rightfully so. Now, of course, the left is very quick to jump on Nancy Mace as a bigot and a transphobe and all of these things. And in fact, ABC News, I think it was ABC News, was very, very excited that they caught Nancy Mace outside the steps of Congress and asked her about this. And I think the exchange was just pretty incredible. Watch.
So the question is, with your piece of legislation about banning women from using...
100% yes.
My question to you is...
It doesn't go far enough. I'll be filing more bills.
You have said that it was created in response to Congresswoman-elect McBride.
100%. And
but should legislation be created targeted at one specific person?
It doesn't mention anyone in the legislation, but
you've said it was aimed at her.
No, I have said it's a result of this. I'm not going to allow biological men into women's private spaces. I will stand in the brink and stand in the way of anyone on the radical left who thinks that it's okay for a penis to be in a women's locker room or a bathroom or a changing room. Hell no. I'm not going to stand for it. And the Speaker said it would be in the House rules package. If it's not, I'll be ready with a motion, a privileged motion to force a vote on this. This is not okay. I'm a survivor of rape. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. And I'm not going to allow any man in any female private spaces.
Now, Speaker,
end of story.
It boggles my mind that ABC News was like, ha, we got her. What would you say to people who think that this is hateful? I don't know. You're crazy too. I don't know what to tell you. Like this is such an elementary, commonsensical thing to say. It boggles the mind that in 2024, we're still having to have this conversation, and she's having to explain herself why she doesn't want a biological man just showing up in the women's restroom when she's at work.
And I love how the media, we cannot believe this position you've taken, Nancy. And I love how Nancy Mace handled that. But I was just like, no, absolutely not. No, we're going to go further. The election, I know you saw some of these polling numbers. One of the top issues that some of the swing state voters said they had is Kamala Harris has focused way too much on transgender issues and not economic issues that are facing my family. And then you still have the media that go, no, we're doubling down on this. How dare you do this? No, look, Republicans have to stand for truth. And when the left just loses their mind over standing for truth, and by the way, a truth that I appreciate her point here on this too, that endangers women and young girls. Yes. This is a truth, a reality that if you do not just stand the line on, young girls will get hurt. We have seen it all over the country. And so I applaud her for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we have. We've seen young girls severely hurt from all of this nonsense. And we're still having to argue our position from a defensive point rather than going on offense and being like, no, this is actually crazy and we're not going to do it.
Well, that should have been the approach. And we let this whole issue of trans stuff get way too far. It got ridiculous. And the fact that you have doctors, people in the medical fields able to talk about this regarding children with just straight face and everything and not be feared of, because they're endangering children, wanting to sterilize them. Their stuff off, which is absolutely insane. And that's why this conversation is being had, and it sounds ridiculous. I believe Mike Johnson, who I'm not a fan of, ragged on him a million times, came out the other day. He was like, look, a woman cannot become a man. That is a factual statement. Yeah. In fact, I don't care where you're at on it. Again, I'm the guy that values liberty overall. Right. Sure, you can call yourself whatever you want to, and that's your right as an adult person. If you want to go do something crazy like stuff off, and I get to make fun of you for doing it. Yes, I do, but that's you're at least free to do that. Leave children out of it, and I don't know, stay out of women's restrooms. I don't think that's too crazy to ask.
That part is definitely not going to be on YouTube, I think.
Well, it is what it is. Sorry, guys.
The YouTube overlords are probably not going to allow that one. Okay, but before we go, I do want to play Mike Johnson. Originally, he was like, well, I'm not going to address this, and then he was forced to address it, and to Eric's point, here's what he had to say. Watch.
Hello, everybody. I just want to make a statement for all of you here and be very clear. I was asked a question this morning at the leadership gaggle, and I rejected the premise because the answer is so obvious. For anybody who doesn't know my well-established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity. And so we can do and believe all those things at the same time.
Everybody with dignity. Not just the tiny percentage of the population who wants to invade women's spaces. We need to treat women with dignity too, which means protecting them and not allowing men into vulnerable spaces. Gentlemen, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Ryan Walters, Eric July. Make sure you're following these gentlemen on social media. We'll see you tomorrow.